All right, we are back on Morning Line, everyone. Thanks for joining us, taking your phone calls this morning for Metro Councilwoman Sharon Hurt, who joins us now. And Sharon, when we went to the break, one of the last things you talked about is the reforms within our police department and wanting to try to ensure that we don't have a George Floyd type incident. Now, there are some who would say that we have one that's going to be going to trial in February, the case with Officer Andrew Delkey, who's currently decommissioned, and Daniel Hambrick. And just kind of your thoughts on that situation where, you know, we have our own kind of version of that. It's going to go to trial, but we have an officer charged with first-degree murder, and your belief in the importance of that trial moving forward and recognizing, depending on the outcome, you know, what kind of reaction we could have in this city.
Right. We got to do what's right. You know, we always need to do the right thing. Officer Delkey is one of those officers that, and maybe he didn't have any problems coming directly from any other position that he held, but there had been some infractions that he had here in Nashville. So we should have been watching him closely to make sure that he was not someone who was caught in situations like he ended up doing, because we know that instinctively he may not have done the right thing. And we know that in that situation, it was not the right thing. This guy was running from him. He was running away. He was not a threat. And I think that we've got to recognize that, and we've got to do the right thing.
As you follow this case,
I hate it. Yeah. I think it's unfortunate.
Sure.
But we cannot continue to accept the wrong and get behind those who are continuously doing what's wrong. It's obvious.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying on that. Now, when I make the comparison, I personally see differences between all of these cases. They each stand alone individually. The Hambrick tragedy, the case with George Floyd. Some may be more cut and dried and clear than others. You recognize here, getting a jury, and in a large measure here, you know, you wonder if you'll be able to find a jury in Nashville with all the publicity that will be able to come back with a verdict as opposed to maybe being hung. Have you thought about that? I'm not sure that if you took a poll right now, you'd have a consensus exactly one way or the other at this point. I think a lot of people have made up their minds, though.
And I think that, as they should, they made up their minds when it came to George Floyd because it was obvious. Mm-hmm. There were other cases similar to that, but we did not have time to look at it and really focus in on it and see it in the way that we have in this pandemic, because people were no longer distracted in their jobs, in their everyday lives, and they were sitting at home and they had nothing to do but to review this over and over and over again. And that's why you see the outcry.
Interesting.
It's people from all over, all races, that are coming out saying this is wrong. And I think that if you were to have the same kind of time devoted to people reviewing the tapes of Daniel Hambrick, that you would have similar. Yes, they are different incidences, but they ended up in the same result, and that is the life lost. And that is something that we need to prevent. We need to prevent getting to that point where that's the last, it should be the last alternative. I mean, to me, in that situation, he could have shot him in the leg if he needed him to stop. And I mean, they are sharpshooters. So why did it have to be that you shoot him in the back? You know, we've seen it in Ahmaud Arbery. We saw it in the young man who was killed in Atlanta recently at the Wendy's. I can't recall his name, but it's been so many incidences that has occurred. And I think that we've got to stop, and the people who have the responsibility to do the right thing got to stop and do what's right.
Councilwoman, we have Vicky on line one. I believe this is Vicky Hambrick, Daniel's mother. Vicky, good morning.
Good morning. How y'all doing?
Good, ma'am. Go ahead.
I want to say this. Have nobody try to reach out to me or Miss Sheila And we want to sit in when y'all have these meetings because we hurting too, and voice our opinion about our son. And I think it'd be fair for us to sit in.
Sure, to have your say as well. I'm wondering, Councilwoman, I mean, certainly the families of these men, I have something to say, and I know Vicki Hambrick is hurting over this. I think you would, I suppose, imagine you would welcome their input, would you not?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what I think is the problem, is that we don't really go and talk to the people who are directly affected by it. And we've got to hear what it is that they say. And a lot of things that they do is that they want to bring up all of the past history of some of the wrongdoings that these individuals have done. But none of them have gone into the police and to their police precincts or the police headquarters and tried to into their territories, into their homes, and shot them. They have been running away from the police, trying to get away, don't want things to happen. And they are innocent in it as it relates to what it is that happens to them at that particular point. Not necessarily innocent of any wrongdoing, but innocent in terms of not trying to be a threat to the police. Now, not all of them are, but from from what I've seen with Daniel Hambrick, I'm just not sure how they could say that he was a threat to the police when he was running as fast as he could away from him. And my heart goes out to Miss Vicki and to Miss Sheila, and we do want to have their input. We do want to hear them, because maybe if we heard them and we thought of them, we would have some compassion and understanding of why it's important for us to do what is the moral thing to do, the right thing, the ethical thing, and not necessarily the political thing.
Let's take another phone call for you, ma'am. We've got, I believe, Kevin. Kevin, good morning. Hi, Kevin. Go ahead.
Hi. Hello to my friend, Councilwoman Hurt. On finding a new police chief, yes, although there may very well be excellent candidates within the department, I would argue that nationwide, with thousands of police departments, there are very well likely going to be candidates just as qualified and who may be more qualified. I do not want anybody to think that we absolutely must hire from within the department. School districts have gone outside their district forever looking for new directors. This year, Adrienne Battle was promoted from within to run the Nashville school district, and that's because she was highly qualified. So I just want to leave you all with the thought that there are tons of qualified candidates, some within the Nashville Police Department, many of them outside. So let's try to be open-minded when we search for the person we want to run what many people believe is the most important function of any large city, the police department. Thank you.
I mean, that's hard to disagree with. You're going to look everywhere for the best candidate. And I would imagine you're open. If there's someone excellent outside, then yeah, maybe that's the person you bring in. But certainly, we've had some real success with folks that have come from within as well. And we've had some disasters with those who have come from outside, I would think, Councilwoman.
Exactly. That's the way it is. It's no perfect person. Therefore, you're going to have pros and cons, goods and bads, and knowing that and understanding that. And of course, we would not shun anyone from outside. In fact, I think we would embrace them. And of course, on inside, there's a culture that needs to be torn down. There's a culture in our police department that needs to be shaken. There needs to be reform. No question about it. And also we know that it's difficult sometimes for people from within to now be the leader and oversee and discipline those that they were friends with, those who were their colleagues and their peers. So I get it all. It takes that very special person. On the other hand, when it comes to the funds that it takes in order to do a national search such as this, when we have experts right here with our Human Relations Commission, we have Tennessee State University, Vanderbilt University, they have law schools, Belmont, all of these people who can bring us right here in the city the same level of expertise. And not saying that we don't use the council from without to help us from within, but I think all of that has to be taken in consideration so we can select the very best person for the job.
Let's take another phone call. This one from Joe for you, ma'am. Joe, good morning. Hi, Joe.
Good morning, Nick. I just want to make a couple of comments.
Sure.
There's a world of difference between the George Floyd incident and Daniel Hambrick's incident. What these people don't tell, they just tell one side of the story. They don't tell you the story that Daniel Hambrick jumped out of a car with a gun. He took off running, he fell down, and he dropped the gun. He picked the gun up again and ran again. So the lady says, well, they could have shot him in the leg. Well, I tell you what, there's probably not one person in 100 that when somebody's running and you're chasing them, that you got enough ability to shoot somebody in the leg or in the arm or something like that. That's not the way you're trained, and then you can't do that. So tell the whole story. Don't just tell one side of the story. Daniel Hambrick had a record a mile long of felons and other things. So, you know, tell both sides of the story. Don't just tell one side of it. The second thing is when the gentleman called in about going outside to get a school director, if you go back and look at the last 3 school directors that we went out and got, they all turned out to be duds. And this last one we had, to get rid of him, they had to pay him about $270,000 to fire him. So tell the whole story. Don't just tell part of the story.
All right, Joe. Councilwoman, that was kind of what I was referring to. I do see the George Floyd case reprehensible, indefensible in most minds of most. In this one, what you're going to be looking at, Councilwoman, when this does go to trial in February, you're going to have people going in with their minds made up on both Delkey and Hambrick's side. And my concern is that, yeah, justice is done, however it is seen fit by the jury, but wondering about what the reaction may be after, depending on the verdict or if you have a hung jury. Because by no means is there a consensus here quite like there is in Minnesota on the Floyd case. It's not close.
Well, again, the closeness to me is that they both are no longer here. If you were to ask Miss Vicki Hambrick, she would say that there is no difference because she lost her son just like George Floyd was lost.
Sure.
So I think that is, in terms of Daniel Hambrick having a record a mile long, he may have had a record a mile long of stealing or wrongdoing, but he didn't have a record that caused him to lose his life when he was running away from the police. And running away from the police, in my opinion, and I have an humble opinion. I'm no way an expert, but from the looks of it, and apparently from other people, that there was some responsibility in Officer Delkey in this particular situation. I'm not versed enough to determine whether first, second, third murder offense, but I don't believe that this young man did enough for him to die at the hands of the police.
I hear you. I hear you. I'm curious, what do you think?
And I think that, And I think that, I understand Mr. Joe bringing in understanding the mile long. So those are the kinds of implicit biases that come into play in situations like that, just like other instances of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Tamir Rice and all of these individuals come into play, because we've seen it happen over and over and over again. It insists me to know that in situations, now not necessarily here, but Tamir Rice was killed in a matter of seconds for having a toy gun. Mm-hmm. And there was another gentleman that I saw on United Shades of America. His name was Jason DeLeon, who actually fought with police. And he happened to be a white young man, fought with police. And it took about 6 or 7 of them to tackle him. And they fought with him for minutes. He got one of their guns, shot the gun, and this young man walked away with probation. Those kinds of things are not acceptable. And because of that, and there are hundreds others, thousands others that can be articulated in that same way with the same results, that something has to change. And I just think that Nashville is in a position right now to do what's right and what is bold and courageous, to make sure that they don't fall into some of the same situations that we've seen across this country where people have not gotten a fair shake.
I hear you. Listen, let's take a quick break. We have a few more phone calls for you, a little bit more to talk to you about in our final segment. Councilwoman, if you'll stay put right there, we'll take a break and be back with more. If you're on hold, Ricky, Ron, and others will get to you right after this. Stay with us.
Thank you.